Hi YouTube, today I'm going to be doing a video tutorial on how to install the genuine Toyota glass brake sensor in your second generation Toyota Tundra equipped from the factory with the 4.6, 4.7 or 5.7 liter V8 engine. Now depending on your pickup truck's configuration, your factory alarm may or may not be activated. In my particular case, the alarm has been pre-activated, therefore the glass brake sensor is a plug-and-play installation. If your alarm system is not activated, then you will need to take your pickup truck to the local Toyota dealership to use the Techstream tool to activate the built-in factory alarm. This only applies to V8 models. If you have a Tundra with a V6, you do not qualify for these install instructions. Now, one of the first steps that we need to do is determine whether or not your factory alarm system has been enabled. And we can do this test by simply taking your key fob, locking the vehicle, and waiting for approximately 20 seconds. If the factory alarm has been enabled, by just simply opening up the door lock without even having to open the door should trigger the alarm. Now I also want to emphasize here that the dummy light on the dashboard here does not necessarily indicate that you have a factory alarm. This light actually indicates that you have a immobilizer system, which on all Toyota Tundras come factory standard equipped with this. After about 30 seconds has elapsed, go ahead and unlock the door. So if your truck does that, it means that you have the factory alarm option turned on. We can go ahead and proceed with the installation. The first step before doing any type of electrical work on our vehicle is to disconnect the negative terminal on our battery. So this is what the glass brake sensor kit looks like from Toyota, and there's not a whole heck of a lot to it. It's actually what they call it the RS3200 Plus VIP alarm system glass brake sensor upgrade kit, and basically the components consist of a computer assembly ECU that plugs into the factory wiring, a single securing nut that screws onto the end of this bracket, and of course the actual glass brake sensor itself that gets installed into the center dash assembly on our Tundra. Now I want to make it clear here that the glass brake sensor option only works with factory equipped alarm systems. I believe that Toyota calls them the RS3200 Plus system, which is included on all V8 Tundras 2007 through 2013. Now I do want to emphasize that even though your vehicle has a V8, it doesn't necessarily mean that the alarm system is enabled from the dealership. All V8s come with it, so just be aware of that. It is a Toyota part number 08586-0C890, and it says 2007 Tundra RS3200 Plus GBS, which means glass brake sensor. Now, in order for us to get underneath into the dashboard here, we're going to have to remove this lower cowl on the driver's side kick panel. But in doing so, we need to first remove this trim panel here. And we can do this simply by lifting up on this piece of plastic. And it should just snap right out. With the dorsal trim panel removed, go ahead and identify the little cowl securing nut located just by the park brake, and just go ahead and unscrew this from the driver's side kick panel. Once this nut's been removed, you can go ahead and peel back this cover, exposing all the wiring harnesses. So what we're going to do next is, once we remove the lower kick panel cover, we're going to remove this lower dashboard airbag assembly to expose more of the wiring in this area. And we're going to start by going ahead and removing this 10mm bolt and that 10mm bolt. Now once we've undone the two lower dash panel securing bolts, what we're going to do is that we're just going to pull this panel away, starting from the bottom here, taking note that there's actually an invisible clip located here, 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 and here. So to dislodge it, just carefully pull forward until the panel just pops off. And then reaching under the column like this, go ahead and pull to carefully undo the clips without breaking the dash cover. Disconnect any wiring harnesses by pressing in on the little tabs. Continue to disconnect the wiring harnesses off of the various switches and connectors that attach to the lower dash panel. Now by the hood release pin, there's also this little underside, looks like dash bulb, so make sure you pay attention to this little fine connector. Disconnect the hood release lever by pressing down on this tab and then pushing the hood release lever out like this. With the hood latch released from the lower dash panel, disconnect the cable and then fish the cable out from the cover. We're going to now remove the driver's side knee bolster airbag by removing this screw, this screw, this screw, and that screw. So here's a service tip, guys. Before we actually undo the knee bolster airbag, I'm going to place like a box or something like this so that I can rest the airbag assembly onto the lid, because we're not going to be disconnecting any wiring harnesses. With the airbag assembly unscrewed, carefully lift the assembly out off the hooks and place onto the top of your support box, paying careful attention not to damage any of these connectors here. Now, in order for us to mount the GBS ECU assembly under the dash, we're going to need to go and locate the bracket that it's going to mount into. As you can see here, here's the wiring connectors and here's the mounting bracket for the knee bolster airbag. But directly above it, you can see that there is a 10mm nut here and another 10mm nut located back there that we're going to have to undo. And then basically, once that's loosened, we can pass our GBS ECU bracket through this hole, which we can then secure with the supplied nut. With the brackets removed, we can sort of see here how this entire assembly sort of moves out of the way. And to install the GBS ECU, we just simply take the included bracket here and just pass it through, such that we pass it through this top hole. You can see that where there's the top hole, the nut, and then there's that securing tab that goes through the bottom hole, if you guys can sort of see that moving. We're going to go ahead now and attach that nut to secure the module. And that's what the GBS ECU looks like mounted. So you can see here, there's the supplied nut that came with it, that stud that was on the bracket, and there's that securing tang. And what we're going to do is reinstall the securing nut back here and the rear one way back there. So once the GBS ECU and the main sort of control computer are remounted back into their proper positions, we can now go ahead and locate the 8P connector that plugs into our GBS ECU that we've just installed here. And not so surprisingly, in Toyota's way of building things, the connector is conveniently located right in front of where it's supposed to be. So we're going to go ahead and just cut this little bit of securing tape off and plug that into the GBS ECU. Make sure that's plugged in securely. Now, before we install the actual sensor assembly, I want to point out here that on the GBS ECU is where we also define the sensor sensitivity. As you can see here, Toyota has already preset this value to 5, and it's actually marked with some white paint. So we're just going to leave that setting there, conduct some preliminary tests before we do any further adjustments. Now, the last thing we need to do here is install the glass brake sensor microphone assembly into one of the unoccupied dash slots located here. And in doing so, what we're going to do is we're going to use a plastic pry tool like this one and just begin very carefully, prying along the edge of the dash console here. Now, I've got an aftermarket brake controller installed here, so it's kind of difficult to get in, but I mean, the gist of it is you just want to carefully get in there to pop this piece off, and it just comes out, it's held in, with 1, 2, 3, 4 securing clips, just like how the lower dash cover was secured. No screws or anything like that. Now, a service tip is to line this edge with some painter's tape so that you don't scratch it. Now, the previous owner of my truck, unfortunately, did something and actually kind of marred this all up, so I'm just going to pry mine off. So as you can see here, this lower dash cover where our cigarette lighter plugs are located is fairly easy to take off. They're just held in with these little 4 plastic clips like I had mentioned earlier. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I just have to start prying here on the inner lip with a plastic panel removal tool. Like I said, in order to protect your dash, to ensure you don't scratch anything, it's always advisable to line this edge with some tape. And you can even put some tape on this as well before you pry so you don't screw up the plastic on the dash. And then, of course, to access the GBS sensor blank cap, you just simply put your finger underneath here. You can actually feel the little tab. You just push it up and then push forward to remove this little cap. And you'll actually notice here on the back of this cap that there's already a 2-pin plug. And that's, of course, because it's pre-wired for the GBS. So we're going to go ahead and remove this and install the sensor. So this is what the connector looks like once we've popped it off the blank. Just simply push the little button here on the connector and it just kind of pops off. And then we're going to slide the glass break sensor microphone onto that connector end. So with our GBS plugged in, we can go ahead and slide the microphone assembly into the dash until it securely snaps in. Go ahead and line up the tabs on our lower dash cover and just simply pop that back into place. Next, we're going to go ahead and reinstall the driver's side knee bolster airbag assembly, and we can do this simply by hooking these hooks onto the hanging holes and then just reattach the 4 10mm bolts securing the airbag. Now when you're reinstalling this, pay attention that you don't pinch any of these wires that are exposed, making sure that it routes around the airbag assembly properly. Now before we reconnect anything else, specifically the driver's side sort of bolster control panel cover, we're going to go ahead and reattach the battery temporarily just to test the glass break sensor's sensitivity and adjust as required until we get to the right setting. Reattach the battery. So with all the doors and windows closed, go ahead and arm the vehicle and wait 30 seconds. Now in order for us to test the glass break sensor, we can use the tip of our key to tap the center of the driver's side window. If the sensitivity is correct, the alarm should go off. So you can see here I'm tapping fairly hard and that's not triggering the alarm. So we're going to go ahead and adjust the GBS ECU. Now to adjust the ECU, we're going to go ahead and take a flat bladed screwdriver and jack up our setting here to a higher level. So here I'm going to turn it from a 5 to a 7. Just double check the setting here. Yeah, it's set to about 7. And go ahead and repeat our test. Going to lock our truck and come back after about 30 seconds. With the system armed, we can go ahead and take our key and tap. We can now go ahead and disconnect our battery and continue reassembling the lower dash assembly. Just to disconnect the negative terminal on our battery. We can go ahead and reinstall the lower dash kick panel. And first, before we begin, we need to fish the hood release cable back into the lower cover and then reattach the hood release handle. And how you're going to do this is you're basically just going to loop the cable in to the eyelet, put this in, and then you're just going to pull forward to get that cable to go in, and then on the cover just kind of click that back in like this. Reattach our little light bulb, and of course the multiple connectors for the switches and controls. And repeat the same for the other side. Align your pop clips and just push the dash panel back in. And everything should fit together nice and straight. Shouldn't have to force anything in. Reinstall our lower dash cover bolts. Reinstall our lower dash kick panel cover. Now guys, just so you know, on the back side of this cover here, there's actually these little pop rivets that's supposed to belong in these locations, and on mine they kind of popped off, so I just used a trim panel tool to pull them off the body so I can reattach it onto the actual cover itself. And to reinstall, we're just going to line up this little hole here. Should just slide in where this edge here actually just exposes just the door gasket and nothing else. Give it a few good hits with your hand. Reinstall this lower nut. Can now reinstall the dorsal trim by lining up these little black pegs into that kick panel cowl cover that you just reinstalled. That snaps in. And conversely, you just have to push it gently. And it should almost take no effort to reinstall everything. Reattach the battery. So as you can tell from my video, installing the optional glass brake sensor assembly in your 2007 through 2013 Toyota Tundra is neither difficult nor time consuming. And although it's never going to actually stop anyone that really wants to break in and steal your truck, that it just is another added measure of theft deterrence for your vehicle. I hope you found this video useful and informative. Give me a thumbs up if you like my video and consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.